if you could explain a little bit about your role in Brick by Brick and how you help provide community housing for low-income folks.
Yeah, okay. So basically, it's kind of a huge, complicated thing, but in a nutshell, what we do at Brick by Brick is that we work with different stakeholders that have similar objectives. So that's community organizations, local residents, the borough, the city of Montreal, and the SHQ, which is the provincial government body that's responsible for developing social housing. And we also work with another social housing management group in the area. And we try to make projects happen. Now, the difficulty of making social housing projects happen in inner city neighborhoods now is because of the effervescent real estate market, or in other words, gentrification. It's very, very difficult because the government doesn't want to necessarily, its objective is not to fund projects so that people can stay where they are and where the services are and where their communities are. They just want to provide affordable housing that fits within their budget. And so if they develop in Laval or in Ville Saint Laurent or in the East End, that's fine by them. But it's not fine by us because that clears out our neighborhoods. So what we do is we try to find resources to make up the difference. One thing that we do is to intervene in financing. So we issue these community bonds, which are impact investment products for middle class people who want to diversify their portfolio and who feel kind of bad about the way they invest and want to invest in a way that has a positive impact. So these bonds allow us to put a part of the down payment on projects, whether they be projects with the government or they be private projects. Right now, we're working on one project with the government here, and it's going to provide 30 subsidized units for low-income residents in Parc-Extension. That's really exciting. We're also looking at other private projects. I'm currently prospecting for a community center. So this is an ongoing thing to get private projects done. And the reason why we want to do private projects in addition to publicly funded ones is because publicly funded ones, first of all, are limited by their budget and political will. And also, they're limited in the sense that you can't just have any resident in there. You have to follow certain guidelines. And one of the things that really affects us in Parc-Extension is that we can't have non-status people who don't have papers. People's status are precarious, and there's a lot of people in our neighborhood, and they happen to be people who are particularly exploited in the residential market as well as in the job market. So in order to make those projects happen, not only do we need financing, but we also need the cash flow. And so we get that cash flow, that income, from services that we provide. We're trying to provide more and more different services, but for now, the services that we provide run through me, through my real estate agent services. So I help people who are buying or selling their home, their chalet, their condo, to do transactions that are in line with their values. And I take a part of that commission to put back into the community, into the work that I do in development, into the work that my colleague does in the community organizing side. So that's basically what we do in a nutshell.
Okay.
Yeah.
When you mentioned the housing that you're a part of putting up in Parc-X, is this something that Brick by Brick pitched to the city?
Yeah, at first we were pushing the city, but we're not a tenants' rights group. There is a tenants' rights group here called the Comité d'Action Parc-Extension. We work closely with them. Like, for example, even just yesterday, I saw a property go up, and right away I shared that with them. I shared the documentation and everything so that they're aware of what are the next properties that are gonna be targets for evictions. so yeah, the community groups here all have their own dynamics, and we have all our relationships. But I believe that we're united with the same goal of like promoting social justice. But no, we don't push the city to quote unquote help tenants. What we really do is we focus on developing affordable housing so that we can take housing off the speculative market and slowly make it sort of affordable and eventually fully subsidized.
Okay.
We
Awesome.
do work with the city, but the city has its own kind of like system, and it generally likes to work with large, uh, big groups, big nonprofits that manage hundreds and hundreds of units, and their focus is really on managing property, not activating tenants or facilitating mutual aid, which is what we're about. We use real estate means to do that, but we're really more about getting people to help each other out. And yeah,
Great. Thank you so much. Um, do you think that low income housing is becoming more inaccessible in Montreal before and during the pandemic?
that's a really good question. The answer to that question before the pandemic is clearly yes. Um, the answer to the question during the pandemic is yes and no, because uh, on the one hand, uh, the pandemic has made housing more important than ever because people can't go outside. Here in Parc-Extension, there's a huge density problem. One of the solutions that the communities leverage to meet the increasing demands in terms of rent is to just be more people in per house. So it's not uncommon to have two households, two families sharing a 4.5. Many people here don't have living rooms. They just split them up. They just put curtains and stuff like that. So that causes a lot of problems, especially intergenerationally. Um, it just makes the situation a lot more tense when you can't go outside, when you don't have access to services like the library, the community center, the gyms, like all those things. That's one thing. And even in the summer, the parks were more policed than ever. People were being stopped and asked if they like were in the same household and stuff. So that really, especially for people who are newly arrived or whatever, and who don't want to like shake things up, it just pushes people back home. So the need for space is greater, and there isn't more space. Occupancy rate in Montreal is under 1%, and it's very low in Parc-Extension. So um, but at the same time, COVID has, because I'm a real estate agent, and I've noticed that the market is eased up in the city center and is burning in the suburbs and in the countryside. People are leaving. Uh, the people like investors and flippers aren't looking at Montreal as much as they're looking at the surrounding areas. So um, rents are easing up actually. Um, so in a sense, COVID has been uh, a good thing in a way for easing the pressure and for kind of like the forces of gentrification or whatever in the city. I believe that that's very, very temporary, and that when we come out of this, it's gonna be back to normal, and not normal, but like the values in the city are gonna go up. Sure. The city, a lot of people are thinking, oh, the city is dead, or I think if you look even at transport, the way the transport system is being developed in Montreal with the REM, um, even people who move out to the suburbs, they need to come into the city to access special services, health education. So um, I think we still need to work and fight really hard. COVID is, in a sense, is a little bit of a break uh, for some people. Um, yeah, I'm not sure if that answers your question.
No, it does. It does. I
It's
know
just
it's
my personal impression.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
it's hard to answer these things. So I really appreciate what you are saying because it helps me understand kind of the situation a bit better in Montreal because it's very
Mm-hmm,
complex, and with the pandemic on
mm-hmm,
top of it, it's
mm-hmm.
really hard to understand. Um,
I would just add one little thing about the nature of like property values and inflation and how people get displaced, because it's not just a question of numbers. I think that a lot of times it becomes like a social issue, and I really think that that the space in the city is subject to like class war, and but I don't believe like some groups do, that it's like there is a tenant class and then there's an owning class. I think that the owning class themselves have very limited options. And in Parc-Extension, for example, I tried not to work in this area because it's my home base, and I don't like a lot of places that get bought up here. They have tenants, and I don't want to displace tenants. But I have noticed, that the people who move into the air, who buy to move in, it's not really their first choice. They are moving in because they can't really afford Villeray, or they can't afford Rosemont, or they can't afford Milex or Miland. And it's a really, really, really cute area. People are super nice. There's lots of like services. It's right next to the park. There's two metro stations. There's You don't lose a lot by moving here than by moving in my land, and the prices are way, way lower. So logically, it makes sense. But the reason why they're not living in my land is because they can't afford it. And the reason why people they can't afford in my land is because there are people moving into my land who can't afford downtown. And so it's like it's not just tenants who get displaced. It's also buyers who get displaced. I mean, displaced is a wrong word, but I think that oftentimes the blame goes to the people who are buying in the area, but really the people who are making it very difficult for local tenants are people who are not buying for themselves, but buying to flip, buying to add value to multiplexes. So like commercial real estate, that's what really drives up prices, in my opinion. Because people who buy commercial real estate, they're buying it to sell, and the way they add value is by getting rid of the current tenants and increasing the rent, because there is a demand from people who can't afford to live elsewhere. And so the source of the problem really is not the people who move into the area, but the people who move into the city center, into the most valuable areas of the city. So the question to ask is, where are the wealthiest people in Montreal getting their resources, and why do they want to establish themselves in the city, rather than pointing fingers at people who are moving into the neighborhood, who are like largely lower middle class people. But anyway, I guess that's an aside.
no, it's definitely good to know. Thank you for bringing that up. I appreciate it. Um, I guess I wanted to ask, I've been looking at statistics showing, the rise in prices of property and rise in, you know, uh, apartment listings. Would you say that during the pandemic, you've seen the price continue to increase or stay the same or lower? One of those.
Yeah, it depends on the area, but the price, I believe that the generally speaking, the pandemic has been a very good thing for property owners, because prices have gone up substantially. I think the reason for that is because the value of home is greater. People now work and live from home, so they're willing to put more of the proportion of their income towards housing. So a lot of people did move. A lot of people still are moving because they're like, we don't know when this is going to end. We need more space. And but because of the limited amount of space in the city, that that increase in value has mostly been felt in the surrounding areas, in the suburbs, Not so much in the east, but definitely in the west, where the REM is coming up. There's a lot of speculation around that transport system, and also the South Shore. Actually, the most value increase has been in the second suburb, like after Laval and towards way down towards Saint Jean sur Richelieu in the South Shore. So yes, the short answer is that yes, COVID has increased the prices, but unevenly. Has affected the suburbs more than the center of the city for sure.
Okay, thank you. Um, I guess we've been kind of hearing, at least for me, the last few years, people being scared that Toronto, or pardon me, that Montreal is turning in Toronto in terms of inaccessible housing. Um, what do you think can be done by the city or anyone else to stop housing from becoming inaffordable to a lot of Montrealers?
hmm So I think there's a few things. One is tenant rights are protected um, um, by provincial law, and the tribunal that's responsible for managing those conflicts between tenants and landlords is a provincial jurisdiction. So, and there are certain laws that have been passed through I think it was an omnibus bill, because I think it also affected a ton of other things like brokerage and condo fees and stuff. But they have made it harder actually for tenants to protect their rights. They recently changed regulations around subletting so that the landlord now has a right of refusal there. They I think that a few years back, they stopped publishing the allowed rent increases. I think that in general, tenant rights has suffered under the CAC. Okay, 100%. If you look at the CAC's ideology and how they want Quebec to look like, and what they want Montreal to look like, they really, I think, really want to clean up the city, make it more francophone, and just have like I think they do really want to see more of a Toronto style with the European touch kind of city, you know. And Montreal is not that at all. Montreal is a place that's supposed to be, um, all about culture, all about expression, all about art, all about diversity. Um, so yeah, but I think that it's gonna go more towards. I think it's moving towards more like with the Toronto style city. um, but Montrealers are super, 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 super strong and resilient and weird, and I really have a lot of faith in my my fellow city dwellers, and we are resisting this. Um, yeah, yeah. The city of Montreal, however, has a little bit of a different attitude. The city is open to innovation. It's really wants to make a progressive, forward-looking, efficient, and sustainable city. They don't really have a lens for diversity and for inclusion. In fact, no, I think that Projet Montréal has no minority city councillor. I'm pretty sure, which is incredible, which is unbelievable. Think about it. They were criticized, and I think they're gonna have a few tokens in for the next one. But yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that these are questions to ask, because at the end of the day, like when you look at access to services and housing, um, obviously some are affected more than others, and I think having a city that's responsive to the makeup of the population can really help, um, can help like fight the provincial government that really has most of the power when it comes to tenant rights.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. And excluding the pandemic, why has the prices of rents and property, why has it been rising?
Yeah, I mean it's funny because I've been working in this field for a long time, and it's funny, I just like I never I took that question for granted, you know, but recently I have been asking myself that question. I've been trying to be honest about it, because oftentimes people will ask me like I'm some sort of expert, you know, and I'll say some like use buzzwords and stuff, but like the fact of the matter is I don't know. Like I just don't know. Like I just don't know where is this money coming from, because it's not. When I started shifting my view away from people, away from saying, oh, this gentrification, dislocation, the cleaning up of the city, the segregation, and all that stuff, and all the effects that it has in terms of institutionalizing low-income people, is not caused by individuals. It's not caused by people. It's not caused by the evil yuppie. It's caused by money. And the I think that, first of all, this has been happening for a long time. Like, people have been coming back to the city for a long time, for since the 90s. Um, Cities breathe in a way, you know, and we're taking a bit of a breath out, but it's going to come back in real strong, because cities have this like ability to suck in so many people, and the reason for that, especially, okay, no, I'm totally getting off track. What I'm trying to say is there has been a return to the city for a number of reasons, and those reasons are linked to the shift in the economy away from like industrial production towards services, and now towards an economy that's founded on a technology. You know, it's such a buzzword or whatever, but the point is that people, their work is very closely tied to their identity and to their values, and not so much to the very broad like social capacity, like with within the service economy, or like their physical capacity. And so that requires uh, communities. It requires access to things that people value. Like, it sounds really dumb, but like, people want to be able to walk their dogs and meet other people who are dog people. People want to be able to go to a coffee shop where they sell fair trade coffee and consume that coffee with other people who value fair trade coffee, because those people also understand that, you know, they're also kind of like educated in certain liberal arts or whatever, and that's how, and it's important to them because that's how they people that they want to make families with, that they want to be friends with. That community is not just this happy thing that is going to solve social problems. Community is also is also what um, is what everybody wants. You know, it's what the yuppies want, and it's what we want, and that's why cities are so strong, because the the cultures are so niche now. Uh, uh, they're so exploded. There's so many different channels. There's so many different subcultures and stuff, and so you need the city, because you can't have you won't have enough of a market for each niche community out in the suburbs. And then the only way to make that possible is to have more density, and or to have more transportation and access to the city. But either ways, you need to centralize. Um, I don't know, centralized diversity. I know that this doesn't make any sense, but I think that when I understand it more and we understand it more, I think in a few years from now, I think there's going to be a language around it, and there's going to be, and then after that, there's going to be policy that deals with that. So I just don't know. The answer is I don't know.
It's hard. I think like it's changing so fast. We can't
Yeah,
really grasp it. It's
yeah,
almost
yeah.
hard to see it. Yeah. But thank you. I think your answer definitely does make me understand it more, and especially people wanting to be within their own communities and like-minded people. I think it makes a lot of sense why it affects the
Mm-hmm,
price.
mm-hmm,
Um,
mm-hmm,
this is kind of getting into homelessness. Like,
mm-hmm.
I'm trying to find that link between homelessness and the housing crisis. And I'm wondering, do you think that the continuation in the rise of housing prices, will it generate more homelessness in Montreal?
100%. You know, in Parc-Ex, we never really had homelessness. You know, I lived here for a long time, and it wasn't a thing. Just in the past 4 or 5 years, I see a lot of people who are homeless. And what sucks about Parc-Ex is the I don't know. Anyways, I don't want to get into it. This is like a whole thing, but the people who end up homeless in this area don't stick around very long because they get picked up. And you don't have that long-standing culture of homeless, solidarity that you would have downtown or in the old port or whatever. So, it's really, really, really very challenging. I think that, like I was saying before, how, you know, upper middle class people getting quote unquote pushed out of downtown into like the plateau, Milan, Griffintown, whatever. Well, people who used to live there get pushed out further and further out, and then people who have who can only afford very, 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 very cheap or abandoned housing in the outskirts of the city end up homeless. And I remember Hochelaga back in the day, like it was full of buildings that were boarded up, and the squatters used to live there. They call them squatters, but they're not squatters. They're just people who can't afford rent and go to those places for shelter and for community, to store their stuff or whatever. And those places don't exist anymore. So then now you have more people who are quote unquote homeless, but those people are already homeless. So I don't know whether, like, I'm not a homelessness guy. I don't know about it. I have to talk to someone else. But one question that I ask myself is there more homelessness, or is it just more visible, or do homeless people have less access to services and shelter because almost all this available real estate is being redeveloped? Because you can't walk around and see boarded up places anymore. It used to be very normal to see a hollowed out, you know, dumpy ass place. You don't see that anymore.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah, I haven't really, and everyone I've spoken to so far, I haven't really heard about redevelopment that much. So it definitely helps out a lot to understand, how Montreal is developing and how people are just getting
Mhm.
pushed out from living here
Mhm.
affordably. It's very complex.
Town developers.
uh,
Yeah,
so,
small town developers used to pick up these.
oh, sorry, I lost you for maybe the last 10 seconds. You were
Oh
saying
no, okay, yeah.
small town developers?
Oh yeah, so it's small time developers.
Oh,
They used to pick up these empty places and they would make a killing. Now, there's no more left. So what they do is they pick up places with very, very low rents that need a lot of work, and they get rid of the tenants. And then that's how they add value by renovating and getting new tenants. Um, yeah. Anyway.
it I guess this kind of connects to renovictions. Is there
Hmm.
anything you can kind of say on that, and just what you've observed and how renovictions are affecting the Montreal housing market?
Hmm. There's a project right now that some friends slash do-gooder academics are putting together called the Anti-Eviction Mapping Project. I could put you in touch at some point, but basically, it's very important to do that kind of thing because we don't actually know oftentimes where people get evicted, where they end up. There were some folks who came in from Harlem who were talking about what happened in their area. I think they're called Justice for El Barrio or something, and they were talking about how when Columbia developed their new university campus there, a lot of people lost their homes, but there wasn't documentation as to like where those folks ended up. And I wouldn't be surprised if they ended up as far as like, you know, New Jersey or like DC or whatever. Like, who knows where these people go? You know, a lot of people I talk to here, when they're fed up with racism and poverty, they move to Toronto. They're like, oh, I'm gonna go to Toronto. I'm gonna have more opportunities. I'm sure that Toronto spits them out in a matter of weeks, and they end up far, far, far like past Brampton, you know. So I think it would be so cool to like. I mean, it's kind of creepy, you know, but just to like see where are these people going? Like, what's the trajectory, you know? Because prevention is one thing, but like, wouldn't it be nice to bring all those lovely people back? Because we're losing, you know, some of the greatest, the what could have been great Montrealers and people who could have made great relationships, you know. Mm.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. Um, I guess this kind of segues into my next question. Is there systemic racism in the housing market? And is this preventing people of color from accessing housing and affordable apartments in Montreal?
Yeah. What are you talking about? This is what it's all about. I mean, for me, um, it's nuts. Like, you know, me, I'm educated. I speak, I talk good. I speak properly. I speak English. I speak French. I can look at a landlord in the eye, make jokes, chill, okay? And still, I have to go to the regie and fight them. People who have don't have the confidence, who don't feel like welcomed in this country or in this city, who don't have social skills, who have been who have been exploited in their job or in their communities or whatever. They are willing to, and I've seen this. They're willing to accept terrible housing conditions and pay 90% of their income. I've visited places that I was that brick by brick was looking to buy, places that we lost to flippers, to developers. Um, People like on Ogilvy, there was a 12-plex there. We lost it for some dumb reason, whatever. I don't know. There was some sketchy thing that happened. We lost it. The folks who were living there did not have any food in their pantry, and the place was full of cockroaches. What the hell are these bugs eating? When you don't have food in your pantry, that means that all your money goes into housing and you're just there because you don't want to be living in the cold, in the snow. That's it. Um, and you know how much they were paying? They were paying what I'm paying. You know, the reason why they end up paying so much for such terrible living conditions is because nobody wants to rent to them. It's not because they don't have the money. That's what's crazy about the whole thing. So yeah, there's tons of discrimination in the rental market, tons. Um, yes, it's definitely based on race, no question about it. But it's also based on class. It's also based on, you know, how people talk, how they carry themselves, and their social capital. I think that's really important. If you look at the best apartments in Parc-Extension are actually traded online through lease transfers from one hipster to another. That's how I got this place. You know, my ex-roommate was like, okay, I'm gonna move in with my partner, and I'm like, cool, give it to me, and that's how I got it. But people who aren't connected that way, they don't have access to these, you know, cheap, lovely apartments. So anyway, I could go on and on. Answer is yes.
This is difficult, kind of a difficult question, but how can how can racism and classism be removed from the housing market?
Well, it can't, because unfortunately housing is commodified, and the housing market is just another market in capitalism, in the capitalist mode of production. And I think that there's different ways of doing this. I never thought I would say this, okay, but I'm getting older, and I don't need to be the same person all my life. But I think government has an important role to play because it has the guns. And you know, as much as we complain about democracy and how ineffectual it is and how it doesn't represent us, which I totally agree with, uh, still it's still there. It's an opportunity that we have. I think that people who have the social capital, who have the time, and who have the mental health and the space in their in their hearts and in their minds should organize to to do all kinds of stuff, direct action, community work, but also take hold of positions of power in government. Unfortunately, our 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 political system is extremely centralized around the mayor, around the prime minister of the province, and the prime minister of the country. But you can still do a lot. And what's great about the parties is they do have resources. They have tons of resources, and you can use those resources to communicate your values, to shift the discourse. Um, I think it really that's something that I'd like to do, in the not so distant future. I think that it's something that I'd be good at, and I think that anybody who thinks that they're able to reach out to a wide array of people should consider, maybe putting their art project aside for a bit and running and like just going into politics. I think that's important. The second thing I think is there's a lot that you can do as a tenant and as a homeowner to mitigate your impact. One thing you can do is support your community organizations, obviously. Another thing that you can do is transfer your leases. It's a lot of work. If the landlord says no, you have to go to the regie. It's not the person that you said that you're leasing out to. But you just take an afternoon, go there, just show up, and you will be able to transfer that lease. It's an extremely powerful tool for keeping rents low. Supporting your tenants' rights group so they can help other people do that. And finally, as a homeowner, there's a lot that you can do because, like the people that I work with, oftentimes they're people who like they buy organic chicken and they buy fair trade coffee and they buy they hire the services of me, a fair trade organic real estate agent, who takes part of his resources to promote community development, to develop uh, uh, affordable housing, and to offer communal solutions to housing, not just to low-income people, but also to middle-income people. I think that co-ops, are great. I don't think that community is something that's valuable only for low-income people. So, as a homeowner, it's important for you to think, hey, how can I get past my insecurity around living with other people and sharing property? Because if I can, then that means that the next person who buys my place, they're not going to have to be, they're not going to have to, well, I'm not going to have to participate in like speculation. I can get a little bit extra, fine. But whatever, like a client I recently worked for bought their condo 3 years ago for, I don't know, whatever, for a certain amount of money. And we sold it for almost $100,000 more. Part of the money that they're instead of pocketing that cash, they're using it to give back to indigenous solidarity work, land reclamation, uh, um, uh, like grassroots shelter projects, and brick by brick, which does the work that I mentioned earlier. So I think that when you have resources, you can do stuff, whether it be time or money. There's tons and tons that can be done to uh, to solve these problems and to be a part of the solution. And what can people do? Call me. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, this is really good things to hear, especially hearing about the lease transfer. That's actually how I got my apartment, and
Amazing.
I have the lowest rent in my neighborhood that from like compared to all my friends, and I
Yeah.
still kind of can't believe it.
Yeah.
And as you were saying that, I was like, okay, that makes sense. Like I know if they made a new lease, got a new tenant, they would have just jacked that price up so much.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
hmm
Yeah. But
Especially in
the
the
thing is
parking.
that yeah, it's important to do that for your friends, and I'm very grateful for my friend. But if you can't find a friend, don't give it back to the landlord. You could call us. You could talk to. You could find somebody in the community who wouldn't be able to get that lease and to give them that apartment, you know?
That's a great
Yeah.
idea. I'm definitely going to keep that in mind for the future. Thank
Yeah.
you. Um, I have one last question, but I just want to say thank you so much for answering all of this. It's really such a big help, and I know this has gone a bit longer than half an hour. So thank you
All
so
good.
much for taking this time. I know that you were speaking about Park X and talking about the rapid gentrification there. Um, I'm just wondering, in terms of the gentrification that's taking place in Park X, are you seeing more of a, I guess we could call it whitening of the neighborhood, that a neighborhood that is quite culturally diverse?
Yeah, absolutely. But the thing is like change is a normal part of life, and um, I don't want to say that it's not an issue for me. It is an issue, but I don't want to get stuck in identity politics. Like, I don't think that, I think that identity politics is important for people who are affected so that they can find solidarity among each other. That's what I think. I don't think that it should be weaponized to create um, divisions between people who are, all other things being equal, more privileged and who have more power on the one hand, and people who are, all other things being equal, less privileged and have less power. I mean, it's there's so much intersectionality. It's so complex. Like, I don't want to get into that discourse. I use that discourse to, make people feel guilty and then donate and stuff like that. But I don't think that's the crux of the problem. I think yes, there's definitely a whitening, but that's just because white people have more resources. And in the future, I can imagine a future that is unjust, where many, 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 many people suffer because they don't, and who don't need to suffer, and a world that is not in tune uh, with you'll have to forgive this because I'm a faithful man, but like in God's, that's not true to God's creation, and that is very diverse, where leaders are like, where people of color are represented completely, like, let's not forget, like, before Trump, the most powerful man in the world was Barack Obama. um, Terribly hateful thing for me to say, I know people are not going to enjoy this, but I think that we should prepare for the future. Right now, it's very important to say that Black, Indigenous people and people of color need to be at the forefront of any kind of change, and that political decisions around discourse and strategy should foreground these communities 100%. And absolutely, I think that if we're going to do, for instance, if we have a lease transfer system, we should absolutely discriminate in favor of uh, of racialized people. We, for our housing project, are 100%, every unit is earmarked for racialized people. There is no space for white people there. But I don't want to make it about that, because I think that, I just want to look ahead to what's coming. If we win that fight, it doesn't mean that we're going to have won everything. And that's not, I think that racial justice is not an end in itself, at all. But anyway, whatever. That's a bit intense there. Back up.